You do not have free will, and today I'm going to try to convince you as to why. Many of us like to immerse ourselves within the quandary of free will. What is free will? Do we have free will? What do we have as a substitute if we do not have free will? Because a preponderance of people, including myself, long for a sense of control over our everyday lives, for the feeling that the decisions we make will directly alter our future by guiding us with the knowledge of the past. But what if I were to tell you that free will simply doesn't exist? Now, with this, we are going to throw the word fate out of the window. I really don't like to use that word, mostly because it has sort of a magical, mystical, or pseudo-scientific connotation behind it. The main thing that sets fate aside from what I'm going to cover in this video is that the concept of fate is regarded as determined by a supernatural power. Anything involving this, whether it be destiny, providence, karma, kismet, we're going to throw all of that away in this video. What exactly do you consider to be free will? Most of us see free will as the characteristic of us possessing absolute superintendence over our lives, and that the outcomes we select and choose are directly prompted by the choices we consciously provide. For example, what I choose to say in a sentence, whether it be kind or rude, can determine the outcome of that conversation based on the decisions I make, along with the impact my words have on the person I'm conversating with. But in reality, all of this is false. You are on a predetermined path. In fact, you are a diminutive piece of a massive puzzle that has already been produced but hasn't been put together yet. But what do I mean by this exactly? If I knew the exact location, direction of travel, momentum, forces, essentially every property of every single atom and piece of matter in existence, I would be able to tell you exactly how each atom would interact with one another throughout the future, allowing me to know the exact and precise future of anything and everything in the entire universe. You would not be able to alter this future whatsoever because there is only one future that will occur. In fact, if you consciously tried to put effort forth to change the future by doing something unusual, I would already know because it would already be inscribed in the future that I've already obtained. With the knowledge of every property of every atom on Earth, including the neurons in your brain, I could tell you the next key you type on your keyboard if you have one. I could tell you the outcomes of every single sporting event to ever occur for the remainder of the human race, and I could calculate which brainwaves will be sent through your mind to cause you to say the next bit of words to come out of your mouth. The knowledge of these brainwaves and neurological movements would allow me to correctly predict every single decision you make for the rest of your life, along with everybody else's. I could tell you the exact amount of asteroids that will ever collide with Mars for the rest of our universe's life, and I could tell you exactly what car you'll own when you're 50 years old. A portion of our decision-making process lies within genetics, but even genetics, or the sperm that wins in the future, can be calculated with this knowledge. Now, obtaining this information is obviously impossible. I mean, we're talking about documenting the precise state of every elementary particle in the known universe at a given point in time. A gigantic freeze frame, essentially. And even if I did have access to this data, none of us would ever have a way of consuming it or understanding it to the point where I could do the endless amount of equations to determine where each particle would go and how they'd react with one another to eventually display the future. But the data would be there if that information was possible to collect. It would just be hidden behind a seemingly endless amount of math. And there are many reasons why we can't obtain this data. The first being obviously the sheer amount of how much data there is, a nearly infinite amount. There is to this day nowhere large enough to store it, either on computer or on paper. But another obstacle that lies in our way is known as the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which tells us that knowing the precise and accurate momentum and position of a singular atom is essentially impossible. And even if it was, it would require conducting these calculations via a reference point, because exact location and relative location are two very different things in this scenario. And thirdly, phenomena such as quantum randomness, other dimensions, chaos theory, and many others would completely destroy this process and render the data useless if they are in fact real, which has yet to be proven. One thing I can say with confidence is that the universe and world is deterministic. Everything is fixed, just not on religious or supernatural grounds. Now, this may be discomforting to some people because one singular future will unfold and there's nothing we can really do to change it. There isn't a 50% chance that Martha will start a vegan diet next week. There is either a 100% chance or a 0% chance. We just don't know which one, which is why we use this silly form of probability. You may think that you are consciously altering the course of your future by quitting smoking, when in reality, the brainwaves and neurons firing that cause you to make that decision are already part of a predetermined set of events caused by the continuously unraveling universe and the constantly reacting matter within it. And as a human, quite literally nothing more than a giant cohesive clump of atoms and elements, we are not exempt from these properties simply because we're sentient or intelligent. Even the senses and stimulus we experience are in fact predetermined. Pete Arfling puts it very interestingly when he says that free will can essentially be viewed like the color magenta, a color that doesn't physically exist in nature but that is created by our brain when we detect the wavelengths of both red and blue. All colors, in fact, are really the opposite of what they may seem. A red apple is actually anything but red. It absorbs every color and wavelength of light except for what our brain perceives as red, which it reflects away back into our eyes. The sound you hear is simply waves of vibrating air that were sent on their own path that you happen to have crossed. I mean, in actuality, nobody has really seen the world in its true form. Our senses are simply reactions within our brains that portray the outside world to us in a way that we can understand. Vision is just a detection of photons, hearing is just a detection of vibrating air, and feeling is just a detection of nerve signals. Our perception of free will essentially operates quite like this, an illusion created by our brain that nonetheless helps define and find purpose within a human existence. And if I went 5 minutes back in time right now under the exact same circumstances, the exact same events would unfold. No human decisions would be different because they aren't truly impulse or random decisions. In fact, regarding decisions, there have even been studies that show that before you consciously make a decision, your brain subconsciously makes it for you. Using an electroencephalogram, scientists can actually detect whether a person will move 300 milliseconds before they actually do so, meaning the brain signals and cerebral orders that tell your muscles to move already are activated and decided upon by your subconscious just before you make the conscious decision to do so. Other studies have shown that within experiments, graphs and magnetic resonance imaging display exactly what button a person will press on a keyboard 7 to 10 seconds before they even do so, because their subconscious brain already decided which one. But some say that a portion of our thoughts and decisions are simply random. Some of them certainly feel this way, but that is evidently not the case. And with that, now we will go into the idea of quantum randomness, which would completely throw the calculations off course that I mentioned previously. Randomness, as most of us know it, isn't really random at all. For instance, you'd consider rolling a dice or flipping a coin to be random, correct? Well, it really isn't at all. Quite like the theory I mentioned earlier, if I were to know the exact velocity, force, and many other properties and idiosyncrasies at which you flipped the coin at a given moment, along with the properties of the environment around it, such as the air pressure, wind forces, the surface it lands on, and so forth, I'd be able to tell you the exact outcome of the coin flip with nearly 100% accuracy, as long as I did the math right, which again would be impossible in a time-sensitive scenario. But with the facts and data, say, on a sheet of paper, calculating the outcome of a coin flip that already happened without me knowing the result is not impossible, and could probably be done by a computer within seconds. Real randomness, on the other hand, has no prior cause or influence. It is otherwise an event that just happens with nothing leading up to that point. This form of true randomness, or quantum randomness, from what humans can understand, is most likely impossible, with no documented occurrences of it in human history. It is simply a theory or idea. Some scientists believe that quantum randomness is happening all around us by the minute on a microscopic level, with forms of matter and energy appearing and disappearing for infinitesimal increments of time. Some scientists say that the Big Bang itself was an event of quantum randomness, while other scientists believe that it's all just a load of baloney. Quantum randomness is defined as the statistical manifestation of quantum indeterminacy, even though the relationship between the two is subtle. And now the Boltzmann brain. The phenomenon of the Boltzmann brain describes, in this particular case, an event of quantum randomness that causes a fully developed and fully functional brain to form anywhere within the known universe, say, empty space, for example. However, the idea of the Boltzmann brain isn't exclusive to randomness. One of these brains simply happening to form due to particles coincidentally and spontaneously coming together to form an entire brain is also technically possible, but almost equally unlikely to simple quantum randomness. The brain, upon its sudden formation, would immediately begin to deteriorate and die due to the harsh conditions of outer space, but would be filled with memories of a full life and a past that was never actually lived. during the few seconds of coherent thought that it would be able to produce. Now, of course, this is simply a hypothetical situation and has obviously never happened, but simultaneously, given how massive space really is, nothing can really prove that it hasn't. In fact, the likelihood of a Boltzmann brain existing in a void is more likely than the probability of our universe randomly being created via a Big Bang. But that was off topic. If we really don't have free will, what does that mean for us? The decisions you make don't alter the future, they simply bring you closer to it down a metaphorical one-way path. If we really don't have free will, does that just absolve everybody of wrongdoing or mistakes? Does this mean that we can instantly forgive the incarcerated for their crimes? Well, no, but we can certainly take the path we've been given and try to enjoy it to the best of our ability. And please, don't quote me on any of this stuff. I am no scientist, I am just some fuck. And with that, I'll see you in the next stream or video.